Well, happy Sunday, folks. Time for another update. Some of the stuff this week, we had a couple big items. So, the first one was the Economic Summit. It was the Oregon Coast Economic Summit. So, this was folks from Brookings to Astoria, and it was held at the Mill Casino here. And some of the items that came up, one of the big ones, early ones in the meeting, it was towards the start, was someone from Iceland and some other folks presenting on the 100% fish concept. So businesses out their way were harvesting fish, obviously, and not using the whole fish through a lot of what they elaborated on during the presentation. And I know there were folks from that industry in the room from up and down the coast. They learned how to turn a $5 fish into about a $1,200 product by using not just the fillet, but the livers and the scales for high-end clothing. I guess they can get tanned out and used for that, and other components, to where they were able to make very viable businesses out of something that was originally just a cut of meat, throw away the rest, and it saves disposal costs. So that was a pretty cool thing to learn about. Some folks may wonder why these somewhat random things come up in the work I do and the things I learn about. That'll become apparent further in here. They also, there was a breakout group around leveraging arts and culture for economic development. So some interesting things that came up there that could be beneficial to our cities. One of them was in the city of Toledo. If you don't know where that is in Oregon, because it's Toledo, Oregon, if you're in Newport, you go about 20 minutes east. I used to have an office there when I ran Bay Area Enterprises. Small town, but deteriorated Main Street, problem a lot of small Oregon towns have. How they were able to really bring investment back in and revitalize it. They found property owners, I think they found 12 properties that were willing to put up what they called phantom galleries. So it's on Main Street, it's got display windows. They would go in, put in behind the display window, put up a art barrier, and put paintings on it, or little statuettes in the windows. And there would be a QR code. So right off the bat, you're going down Main Street, and now instead of just a broke down Main Street, it's kind of a walking art gallery everywhere. And they would put QR codes in those windows to where somebody could buy the art they saw if they were interested. But also, if they went to the QR code, it gave all the specifications of that building, what could be rented. And in doing that, over the course of a couple months, they were able to get 7 out of the 12 buildings in their downtown rented out. So not only did art sell, but vacant spaces became used again. They became lived-in spaces in the downtown. And it was a great incentive to revitalize. It was good for the art community, and it developed placemaking as a concept in urban development. And this would be part of what that idea is. And something extending similar to that is if you ever go through the city of Florence, you might notice statues all over the place, artist statues. They are for sale, but they're there on a rotation. So, and Florence was another city that presented on what they're doing. They sell on, I think it was a 2-year cycle. So if you see a statue you like, it sells. The statue is in town, beautifies town. And when that statue sells, the city there gets 30% as commission on the sale. So it turned into another placemaking activity around art for their community. It was good for the community that does the art, the sculptors, going with that word. And it became a kind of revenue generator for the city as well. It's not huge dollars, but when they're big statues, it's a meaningful amount of money that can be reinvested either into the art community or into some other project that the city has. So when we think about those things, in my mind, I'm with the county, and I had to clarify in an email to somebody this week that I'm a county commissioner. I believe in control at the lowest level of government, so I don't interfere in city's business unless I am asked for, or if I'm trying to help them get an opportunity. But cities could in the event of somewhere like downtown North Bend, Myrtle Point, Coos Bay, really all of the towns we've got need help with their downtown. Phantom galleries would be a good way to draw people into those spaces to look at what's there, make some purchases, and then maybe rent out some of those properties to revitalize their downtowns. And then statues, of course, another good placemaker. While I was with the city of Coos Bay, we put some statues in different places as kind of a attraction. When I go through town, I see people looking at them. It draws foot traffic. It's a good thing. And this is a way to do that on a rotation that creates continued interest and results in a level of revenue. So it's a cool thing. I know there were representatives from all of the cities there to learn about these things, so I'll look forward to seeing them do something with these lessons we learned there. The PCIP was a big topic that came up at this meeting. There's going to be more communication around that starting January of 2026, so just coming up. As the project gets to a point where it's going into a planning phase where they're going to need community input, that's coming up sooner. I guess the nation of Korea, some of the bigger shippers there are very interested in, if the PCIP gets completed, they would like to contract usage. Folks may not know this, but East Coast of the United States has 28 international ports of size, and comparable to those, the West Coast only has 7. So it's an appealing thing for folks. A lot of stuff going to the center of the country now is apparently going to Prince Rupert up in Canada, which in the early 2000s there was this same topic brought up, and the question of viability came up, and Coos Bay turned away from that opportunity, and Prince Rupert took it. Currently, Prince Rupert is where a lot of the international shipping comes in, and they have been sustainable. They benefited because we didn't act. So this time, it's looking more positive, I hope. Important part is the ecological aspect. So the Port of San Diego was presenting at this meeting, talking about what their system looks like. They've been innovative. Instead of the riprap, just the giant rocks for retention. They've started working with these kind of hexagonal shapes. They're, what's the word I want? Like substrates for ecological development. And since they've implemented those, they've seen a return of 40 to 50 species of different aquatic life come back to the area, because these things are good for they're good substrates for ecological development. And they mentioned eelgrass. That's been a big concern of the tribes I know. So I brought up to them, how are you preserving the eelgrass? Because that's a concern we have here locally as a cultural heritage item, an ecological item. And they said, most of the eelgrass where they're at is growing at the 2 to 8 foot depth, and they're just not having a problem with it, which I was stationed in San Diego. If you know the San Diego harbor, I was there 05 or 06 to 09. And it was a joke. If you wanted a third eye, just jump in the bay in San Diego. So apparently they're doing a lot better now. But for them to be doing so good at the scale that region operates is a good sign that we could pull it off here too. Because when I was working at the personnel department down there, we handled the records for 36 ships. 2 carriers, a lot of destroyers, cruisers, LHDs. And if their bay is maintaining biological stability with those ships still there, then absolutely I'm confident we can maintain a healthy ecosystem here, because they've got the international shipping plus the Navy. We're just looking at the shipping. So I felt a lot more comfortable after that, because I wasn't sure how that could be preserved or what that might look like in the long run. Korea's interested. We got that stuff. We got those things. We've got seafood came up again. I guess I already talked about seafood, so I'll talk about it again. The topic of market share. So currently, along the Oregon coast, 90% of seafood that's sold is not local product. It's imported, it's shipped in, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is the way things are happening right now. So if that number went from 90% to 80% of market share, so 20% local sold instead of 10, that's looking at a $90 million increase in local market revenues. So when we talk about local buying, that is a really good illustration of how significant a topic that is. If just a 10-point shift from 90% imported to 80% means $90 million in local revenues, that local, when I say local, I mean people, not governments, but local people, that is a huge illustration of the impact of buying local. So just something to bear in mind when you're out shopping. And then if you're running a business, how do we buy more local seafood? There are incentives through Business Oregon that have been working on this issue. So good things coming out of that. Interesting knowledge to have. We've got another item. If you know folks that are working in the tech industry or trying to kick off a business locally that involves tech, they need to contact the South Coast Development Council and ask for Tanya. Tanya runs the entrepreneur program through the South Coast Development Council, the SCDC, and there's a significant focus from the state and federal government around investments in technology. So she has resources available to her, and if somebody's trying to get their start in a tech business, an entrepreneurial endeavor, she is a great person to connect with. So if your friends are working on that, tell your friends, and she will thank you, and she will she will thank me for being useful. So that actually branched into the Innovation Hub. And that's what that was. So I'm going to cross that out. I know why that was. I took a tour of the South Coast Innovation Hub over at SWAC this week. And that's a component branch off of the South Coast Development Council. And that was one of the big takeaways for me was that. I was there mostly to be supportive. I'm on their board, so I'm very familiar with it. But we had people from up and down the coast at it this time. And we have one of the most successful innovation hubs, or we have the most successful, I believe, in the state, while also being one of the least funded. And that's because we have excellent staff, and we need to help the state understand they need to get their priorities right and invest in people who are successful to make more success. Because currently there's at least one program that was a complete flop, and they're receiving twice as much money as ours. So, sometimes merit needs to play a role as well when we look at investments. I also was with the Association of Counties this week. There was a meeting. It was a regional meeting, and we had discussions around we had discussions around governance and tax and revenue for local governments. Because right now, 60% of counties are looking at insolvency within the next 4 years, and roughly that many cities, that same percentage of cities, are looking at insolvency in the next 4 years. So for context, there are 36 counties in Oregon, 241 cities in Oregon. 60% of each are looking at being insolvent. They will not be able to meet their mandatory obligations if their funding does not change. So a big topic across all the boards, Association of Counties and League of Oregon Cities, is how do we fix that? How do we not fall off the cliff in 4 years? Some of what I was able to bring up was still the same thing I've talked about, the income tax proposal, collecting more information. I've drafted some bills to get information that I need if I cannot get action out of state offices. I've connected with legislators, still not gotten some of the information I need. So I've drafted some things, but that stretches the process out. Because in the short session, each legislator can only submit 2 bills. And that's what's coming up. Someone brought up sales tax. Obviously, that comes up at a lot of conversations. It's come up locally as well. Commissioner Taylor looked at how it could be done and alleviate property taxes by supplementing with sales taxes if a local one were imposed. My belief is that the state level imposition would be important, and I think that's where we would get the best outcome. Not that I'm proposing this right now. We're one of only 5 states that doesn't have sales tax, and historically it's not a palatable thing for Oregonians. It's just part of who we are. We don't have sales tax. Unfortunately, that means we also don't capture money off tourists when they do commerce here, except for through the taxes of the businesses, and other states have the advantage there. If I were to look at it, what I would see, I was playing with numbers, and we could offset a substantial portion of income tax with sales tax. I think that would be... Buddy, are you playing with something? I have a squinty kitty in my office playing with a salt shaker that he stole. We could offset a chunk of income tax if a sales tax were in place. And I think that would be a better trade-off for Oregonians. Yeah, and you could make it to the lower 80% of income brackets. It would be a pretty good exchange where people in Oregon would save money and we would get more out of our tourists. And then topics around timber came up. Timber always comes up. Curry County is doing something interesting with the federal government. It's like any idea. If the answers were simple, we wouldn't have these problems. They'd be solved. So they're bouncing with some ideas around leasing land from the federal government. It was originally something to do with another exchange of land through a different header. Complexities after complexities. The federal system is highly regulated, but has pros and cons. Obviously, if there were able to be more timber sales, you would generate more revenue. Some of the things that don't get thought about as much with that idea, because you've got the obvious counterpoint. On the one side, you're cutting trees, making money. On the other side, some folks don't want to cut trees. And historically, that's been in conflict. But at the state level, not cutting trees tends to win. Part of the problem we get into with federal land is when I've talked to our forest firefighters over the last few months, one of the problems getting into federal and state land is they are not well maintained, for one, and the roads aren't there that you find on county land because the county logs. So even if the federal government were to allow only for the creation of harvest along roadways, for a certain perimeter to make it economically viable in federal forests, you would get a limited timber cut range done so that you could more easily put out fires within federal forest and state forest. So you get not a perfect solution, but it is a balanced solution of the two concerns. I don't know that that's specifically what they're looking at, but it is what I see when I look at that problem from the folks I've talked to, and especially pertinent right now as we look at the fires happening south of us over in Curry County and Agnes. I think the city got evacuated down there. It's a good example of why we need better fire security, which includes roads to access where the fires are. You can go down a rabbit hole on this one about cuts making fire blocks and how you prevent increased fires due to those cuts. But that's what I'm interpreting and seeing here. Now, there's going to be future work groups put together. Interesting one that came up as well was a consortium model. So I saw people debating about consolidation recently of cities. And something you see that is not consolidation of cities is the collaboration of services. So, as an example, Eugene Springfield has a unified fire department. The cities didn't consolidate, but they do have one fire system that services both municipalities for an efficiency of scale. without needing to merge the two cities. The conversation that came up for us was exchanges of services and collective services across the region. So right now, something the county is doing that'll save money and create flexibility in staffing with the cities is our planning department is entering into agreements with other cities' planning departments so that we can flex staff across the cities and the county, so that we can be more agile when demand spikes in one area and slumps in the other, and so that we can have just a more financially efficient system. You don't need as many staff at one location when you have enough staff across all of them. So that's something else the county is doing to save money, and became a bigger discussion at this meeting for the coastal region commissioners. So in case anybody thought we're not finding ways to be efficient, we are still finding ways to be more efficient at the county, and across all counties we're discussing how we can work together to avoid 60% of counties becoming insolvent in the next few years. For folks that don't know, insolvency in the context of a county means it can't meet its obligations, so the state takes over more of your local control and does it for you, which is not something I approve of. I do not want the state trying to run, as an example, our planning or our clerk or our assessor or really anything here, because they can't seem to run themselves, so why would I want them to run us? One of the tangent things I did this week, I'm on a grant review committee, so I was reviewing some grants around I think it was through Advanced Health's grants, the child care and food access and different things. Just I like to throw in one of the random things I do each week, so people know that there's not just these things I talk about, there's little pieces to being a commissioner that float around that you have to move some of your attention to as well. As it pertains just briefly to the idea of the state coming in and taking over duties when a county or a city can't, I've also posed the converse question to our colleagues at the Association of Counties and my fellow commissioners on the coast. How do we, or is there a process, or do we need to make a process to where counties can take back services from the state when the state won't meet its obligations? So in this case in particular, I'm looking at patrol, because right now, brief rabbit hole. So if a county does not have patrol, the state police charter says that the state has to respond to the calls. Coos County is allocated 14 deputies, 2 sergeants and 1 lieutenant for the state highway patrol. If Coos County didn't have a patrol, they would be required to respond. This was brought up to me by an officer that was playing with ideas. My concern there is, would the state actually do it? And the answer there is no. Currently, they have 9 of those 14 officers. Near as anybody has been able to tell me, they have never met their quota of 14. Curry County, I think, is allocated 7 patrol. They have 2, last I saw. We, as a county, the only problem we have had retaining officers at the level we're able to is money. If the state gave us the money that they're spending or have allocated, we could have more officers and we would cover everything. Whereas the state, when this came up in Josephine County some years ago, said, well, we don't have the officers either, and they just ignored that part of their charter and didn't serve the people within their jurisdiction where they had authority. So I'm going to cut that tangent off there because it gets longer and more complicated the more I talk about it. The hospital had a presentation with the Coastal Caucus, so again, commissioners and legislators from up and down the coast were at the hospital to learn more about their plan. They have a plan, but it has a lot of contingents beyond their immediate control. So there is a banknote on the hospital for $45 million. The hospital does not have $45 million. So if, I think it was the Bank of Montreal calls in the note, they're out, basically. They don't have the money to honor the note, and it goes under. There's other factors coming in. I don't remember them all off the top of my head. That's an example of something that's out there that could basically sink the hospital, and it's not the only thing out there that could sink the hospital, but they do have a plan that would stabilize it within a few years. It's just a matter of getting to that point. So the ask they had to legislators was they would like to have their note refinanced through the state treasury instead of being held by a bank in Montreal, Canada. Seems pretty reasonable to me. It would be safer that way. It's not likely to be called in. It won't be called in, basically. And that would really secure our hospital more than it is right now. And also infusions of cash, because we can say all the things that should have been done different in the past, but we're here now. Their board has been flipped over. The CEO has been changed. They don't have a time machine, so they just need the things to do what they've developed a plan to do that will be successful, and they have to make it to the finish line with that plan. Drink a coffee before the next rant. So, there was a response in the room that did not impress me. So for, I'll say Coos Bay, North Bend, north up through Lincoln City, we have, that is a state senator district, and our state senator there is Senator Anderson. Now, if things change with the hospital, if they're not able to do the things they need to do in the imminent, they will have to downgrade. If they downgrade, they lose some of their critical care services. The beds get cut by about half, so it would be 50 beds plus mental health as opposed to the 90-something, I think it is right now, plus mental health. And they would lose some of their critical care services, like the emergency services when somebody's suffering a heart attack. Their level of care wouldn't be as high as it is right now. They're the only ones of their tier on the coast that can really handle a crisis at a particular level of heart attack. I'm not a medical specialist. I apologize. I'm sure there's words for this. I don't have them. The next nearest hospital is in Eugene. And the senator asked the question, so? That was the wrong answer or question. He pointed out the other hospitals on the coast don't have this service. They're usually an hour and a half away, and they have to deal with it. Why does it matter if ours is different? So I composed myself for a bit there. And I was encouraged to speak, so eventually I did. Reminded him that he is not in those other places on the coast. It's 2.5 hours to Eugene where we're at, not an hour and a half on your standard drive. And it matters because we don't want our people to die. It was a very stupid question, in my opinion, and he really stuck to it, and I was not very happy. I don't remember all the words I said. I was pretty pissed off, but I got lots of thank yous afterwards from other legislators and staff there. But I made sure I emphasized for him to remember we are not in Lincoln City where he lives. We're not in Florence or anywhere else farther north. We are far from medical care. Our median age here is 46 to 48, somewhere in there. So it's very necessary that we have immediate care when somebody has a heart attack because our population is frankly more likely to have them. And the fact that everyone else has lower levels of care shouldn't be a reason that we just throw up our hands and accept a lower level of care. We don't want to be on the same level as others. We want to do better. And we have that right now, and we shouldn't want to lose it. So I made sure I emphasized those points. And yeah, not very happy with him at the moment. And last thing I'll talk about I sent out an email earlier to get some clarification. I know this is going to be something that comes up in the community because right now we have a number of fires, natural disasters around the state, and part of what is in that system, the National Guard responds when we have crises. I don't know to what extent they're active around the state right now. I've asked that question in an email. I've got, uh, on the topic of tangents, some months ago, some folks thought that there was a big contingent of federal officers in the city. There were some trucks that weren't familiar outside of a hotel. So I went and looked at it because people were worried, and found out it was a National Guard CBR team, chemical, biological, radiological, doing local trainings on hazmat. And because of that, and informing the community what it was, some folks questioned why a commissioner was doing that. Well, one, it put people at ease, and two, it built connections. So I have contacts with generals now on the National Guard and civilian leadership. So I've reached out to them to find out what the mandate today is going to mean. So earlier today, the president federalized 200 Oregon National Guard troops and is deploying them to Portland, indicating that Portland is a war zone and to control things with all levels of force required. So I've contacted National Guard to find out, to the extent they can share it with me, what the mission set is going to look like. Are there intentions to expand this? What do I tell families who ask what their child is doing now? Because people come to us, commissioners, city councilors. When I was a city councilor, you're a face of the government that they can walk to. People ask you questions, and I am happy to answer them whenever I can. So I've reached out to find out what the answers are, and what the impact will be for the national or natural disaster response throughout the state right now, because that's an issue right now. We're still seeing massive fires. As I mentioned, I think Agnes was completely evacuated. I saw a level 3 evacuation notice go out. So, trying to learn more about that. Now, I haven't been to Portland in many months. I try not to be honest, because I just don't like to travel that far. And I don't like to be in that big a city. But I haven't seen it, but I did see pictures from commissioners being up there for a kind of farmers market thing in Pioneer Square, which is nicknamed Portland's living room, big trolley hub. I went to college at Portland State, so I lived up there for 3 years during the Occupy protests, so that was different. But I didn't see what's being talked about. Counterpoint to that, downtown is not where the ICE facility is. If you know where the OHSU waterfront office is, it's several blocks south of that, next to I think a ballet performing hall and a restaurant and some other stuff. And this coming week, I'm not going to be able to make it up there. I was going to see if I could, but I can't. The League of Oregon Cities is having its annual conference in Portland. So I'm hoping some of those folks will take video for me, because I want to see things. I don't have a great deal of trust for news, and I don't have a great deal of trust for the federal government, no matter who's running it. It just is what it is. So hopefully I'll get some news out of those folks. It's 241 cities in Oregon. Each council has between 5 and 7 people generally. The LOC conferences are big, and this is the 100-year anniversary. So we'll probably see some news. Nothing that's happening up there has apparently dissuaded folks from holding a massive conference of all the cities. And more broadly speaking, in my mind, it's the feds pouring more resources into Portland. Whatever Portland is at the moment, that's what their local government has chosen. I would rather see some assistance dealing with the drug epidemic, or more resources going into the development of the port project, or really any economic driver for our region. But this is how folks have chosen to spend money. So Portland is going to have, I guess, 200 Oregon National Guard inside it. Not the best use of assets in my mind, but I also am not up there. I don't know what's up there. So hopefully we'll learn more soon. Like I said, I reached out to some generals, some civilian staff, and I've reached out to our local customs guy because I try to emphasize to people we do have a Customs and Border Patrol office in North Bend. It has one guy in it. He is a customs officer who checks vessels, international vessels, between Brookings and Newport. He is not ICE. Do not bother Rob, please. He drives around in a truck. It's got a sign on the side. If it was ICE, they probably wouldn't put a sign on the side of their truck at the moment. I've never seen him wear a face mask. He is there to check vessels and make sure that they're bringing in the things they say they're bringing in, that they're not transporting stuff that's going to get everybody sick over here. Rob's a good guy. Don't bother Rob. But I'm going to see if he can give a presentation to the commissioners so that we can also get some information out there about what all he's working with and the challenges he has, because I know his office is also understaffed. And that is going to be my update. That was a long one, but there was a lot to discuss this week. So I wish everybody a good one. Have a good week. I'll have some other stuff. I've got governance and revenue with the Association of Counties, public safety, and a global trade roundtable this week that I'm going to. So should be some good information on this next one. We are in conference season. And I will see everybody later. Take care.